and squawked in 2002 that they had to take their shoes off, and now no one even notices it anymore. Are we getting more okay with people watching us, considering we put ourselves out there on YouTube every day?
Well, I think that part of the problem here is that we don't often know what we are giving up in terms of civil liberties, because so much is secret. All of this was secret until 2 days ago, when The Guardian and The Washington Post disclosed that the government is engaged in this broad dragnet surveillance of everybody's phone calls, not the content, but the metadata. Meaning who you call and how long the conversation was and where you were when you made the call. All of that information is being swept up into government databases. And we never had a debate about whether that was wise or legal or necessary. All of it was secret. So I think that at some point you may have to ask this question: what are you willing to give up? Although I think that those kinds of questions actually come up relatively rarely. At some point you might have to ask it. But before you ask the question, you have to have some information about what the government is doing, and too much is secret. I don't think I've ever said this before, but I actually agree with Rudy Giuliani. I agree that no president should be trusted with this kind of power. This is the kind of power that not only can be abused, but will inevitably be abused if it's not subject to real oversight. And I think that the disclosures over the last couple of days make clear that there hasn't been any real oversight.
Okay, to that point, no president, in your estimation and in the good mayor's estimation, no president should have this much sweeping power. You said it yourself. There is a vast difference between metadata and content. And for those who are forgetting those terms, the metadata is the phone number that you called and the time you made the call, not what you said in that call and your histrionics in that call. There's a huge, listen, there is a massive difference even when it comes to these warrants, because for one, you don't need a warrant necessarily all the time. The Supreme Court made that very clear. And for the other, you do. And in these kinds of searches that have been going on in surveillance, it's meta, it's not content.
Right. Well, I guess I'd just say two things to that. First, I don't think that the Supreme Court has decided this question. The case that the government keeps citing, these are cases from the 1980s, and they involved discrete requests for metadata. So requests for metadata about one person's phone calls over a short period of time. That's quite different from asking for everybody's metadata for a 3-month period or a 7-year period, which is what turns out to have gone on here. This is surveillance on a scale that I don't think the Supreme Court has ever considered. And then the other thing is, you're right. There's a difference. There's a difference between metadata and content. But metadata can be quite sensitive too. And if you just imagine a program under which every American had to, at the end of each day, submit to the government a list of the people they had called, how long those conversations were, where they were when those conversations took place. I don't think anybody would stand for it. But that's exactly this program. The only difference is that the government did this in secret.
That poor civil servant would be bored to tears with my list. But let me get your reaction to this, because when it comes to the Supreme Court, and it was close to the age, it was 1979, it was Smith versus Maryland, regarding the Fourth Amendment and search and seizures. The Supreme Court, has held that there is no legitimate expectation of privacy for phone records that are held by a third party, which can be seized without a warrant. Again, that for the meta, not for the content. My question to you is, when a lot of people hear about what's going on and they hear that it's meta, they sort of think, well, that's just the slippery slope, ain't it? Is it?
Yeah, well, it is a slippery slope, but I don't want people to accept that metadata is not sensitive. It is sensitive. Just think for a second, if the government can find out that...
It's been settled. Meta's been settled. That right there, that case in '79 suggested that if something's held by a third party, it can be accessed without a warrant.
No, but again, that was a case involving a discrete amount of information about a small group of people. It's not the same thing as gathering everybody's information for a 7-year period. There's a huge difference. And I think that the Supreme Court would see that difference. And there's a case from last year called U.S. versus Jones, in which the court actually said that it's one thing to gather a small amount of meta information. In that case, it was location information over a small period of time, a short period of time, and quite another thing to gather it over a long period of time involving many people. So I think that there is a difference between a discrete a discrete amount of information and a kind of infinite amount of information, which is what the government is collecting here.
I hear you. And, you know, when you look at it, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, the Bush administration's requests for FISA material have been dwarfed by the Obama administration. Rudy Giuliani said publicly, as a conservative Republican, this is the kind of tool I wanted to be able to target terror. So in your estimation, you have a Democratic administration. Why do you think that it is doing this if it weren't for the democratic principles of safety as opposed to far-reaching conservative principles of targeting?
Well, I think there are many reasons for it. I mean, you know, it's nothing new. Every government wants power. It's not limited to Republicans or Democrats. It's just a fact about the world. And you need to have institutional checks and balances to make sure that that power isn't abused. None of this is, you know, controversial. These are principles that were part of this is why the founders of the United States founded the United States, because they believed that there ought to be checks on government power. Now, I think that the disclosures over the last couple days make entirely clear that the checks that exist right now are insufficient, that there hasn't been sufficient congressional oversight, that there hasn't been sufficient judicial oversight, and most important, there hasn't been sufficient public oversight because the government has disclosed far too little information about what it's doing. Now, everybody accepts that there has to be some degree of secrecy.
The oversight, and I don't know if this is sufficient or not, but it sounds pretty good. Every 90 days, Congress is informed about these institutional checks and balances. Sadly, it is classified, so therefore you and I are not privy to what these institutional checks and balances are, but there is that mechanism in place.
But let's just ask that question. Why is it classified? Why is it so sensitive? Why can't the government say to the American public, we are collecting this information, everything about every phone call you make, and we can't tell you about any specific investigation, but here's why we put the program in place. This is why it's necessary. These are the checks that are in place to protect privacy. And now you make a decision. Is this a wise policy or isn't it?
Well,
that's
Thomas
the kind
Jefferson,
of debate we should be
Thomas
having.
Jefferson once said, people who expect to be ignorant and free expect what never was and never will be. And I'm now wondering whether he was talking about the bad guys or us and what we want to know about our government. Jamil Jaffer, thanks for being with us.
That's a good question.
It's good to have
Thank you.
Thank you for your insights. Great insight as well. About 20 minutes from now, we're expecting to hear from the president himself. Oh, what's he going to say about this? Probably nothing, because he's in San Jose, California, wanting to talk about health care and health care law there. But people throughout the country certainly want to know more about why the government is engaged in this big spy operation. Will he take questions? More in a moment.
The sun powers life. And now it powers our latest innovation. Introducing the world's only solar-powered home energy system, which can cut your heating and cooling bills in half. Call now to get up to $1,600 back or 12 months deferred interest on select Lennox home comfort systems. Offer ends June 14th. Plus, download our free Lennox mobile app with an energy savings calculator. If your current system is 10 years or older, start planning now and take advantage of special financing. So call now to get up to $1,600 back or 12 months deferred interest on select Lennox home comfort systems. Offer ends June 14th. And download our free Lennox mobile app. Lennox. Innovation never felt so good.
Closed captioning brought to you by Meineke Car Care Center.
Matt's brakes didn't sound right,
So I brought my car to Mike at Meineke.
we inspected his brakes for free.
Free is good.
Free is very good.
Now get 50% off brake pads and shoes at Meineke.
On the season finale of Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown, Congo.
I wanted to come here, and now I get that chance.
Get ready.
Welcome to the jungle.
The season finale of Anthony Bourdain Eastern and Pacific on CNN.
Okay, this one, and this one, and these.
Oh, why so many?
Well, these guys have a Gateway HD PVR. They can record 6 HD shows at once, watch them in any room.
Wow, how can
And
they...
of course, they can pause live TV.
Well, why would they want to pause live TV?
Oh, you know, maybe you just need a break now and then.
Get the Gateway, our most powerful whole home HD PVR.
Let's do it. Rock and roll. DIY Network is the destination for those who want to do it themselves. In the bedroom.
Is that going in at all?
Bathroom.
Let's do it.
Kitchen.
Here comes the change.
Front yard. Backyard.
Oh my God!
Whether it's inside or out, DIY Network's exclusive shows offer everything you need.
I'm that guy from that show.
It's a happy house again.
Subscribe now. If you don't already have DIY Network, contact your television service provider to subscribe.
I'm Erin Burnett. This is CNN.
The East Coast is getting absolutely drenched by Tropical Storm Andrea as it continues to roar northward up the country. Flash flood warnings are in effect now for 13 different states, all the way from Georgia up to Maine. Chad Myers is in the Severe Weather Center in Atlanta. So in this path, flash flood warnings, not for every state, but significant portions of these states?
Yeah, you know, even North Carolina with the flash flood warnings. Flash flood watches all the way, which means flash flood could happen any time when rain stays in the same spot. So these watches go all the way from Maine all the way down to North Carolina. And even though this storm is still, the center is still in North Carolina, it's raining in Boston, New York, Washington, all the way through these big cities. And it's not so much that we're going to have major flooding in major rivers, but it's that urban flooding, 5, 6, 10 inches of rainfall in the streets of the city because it can't run off, because guess why? Because there's concrete in the way for it to soak in. So here's the path where it is now in the Carolinas, moving right up over Boston by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And those watches, as you said, all the way from Maine, all the way down south of Norfolk, and this red zone right through here. That's I-95 with flood warnings right through there. 8 inches of water on some of the roadways down in parts of the Carolinas. The rain continues today. We've already had a couple of inches across Georgia, but the big story is how much more still to come in the big cities. 2 to 4, New York City, the Poconos, right on through the Delaware Water Gap, Philadelphia. Everywhere that you expect the water not to be able to run off because of the concrete is going to get a couple inches, if not more than that, of rain today.
I heard Christine Romans and John Berman saying this morning on the morning show that this is going to be comparable to the rain that we got during Sandy, but not the winds.
Not the wind, exactly, not the wind. And even some spots in Sandy, if you move on up into Vermont, you had 8 to 12 inches of rainfall. That's not going to happen. We're 2 to 4, but that's in those big cities, exactly what we had in Sandy, yes.
What's that statistic, Chad? More people die in flooding from big storms than lightning or winds or tornadoes?
Because you see it all the time. Even when I was out storm chasing, we tell them, don't drive into water, don't drive into water. What do? They drive right into the water because they think the road's there. And sometimes the road isn't there. It's been washed away. You fall into that gully and then it washes you away.
And there you go. All right, Chad, great advice. Thank you. He's keeping an eye on it for us as well. I want to turn back to that top story. Just how much does the government know about you? Do they have your records right now? Are they watching you as you type, which one of the leakers says? Mr. President, really? Honestly? Is Mr. President going to speak about this when he takes to that live mic soon? You'll find out in a moment.
At OD, whatever business you're in, that's the business we're in. With premium service like one of the best on-time delivery records and a low claims ratio, we do whatever it takes to make your business our business. OD, helping the world keep promises.
Introducing all-you-could-eat wings every night only at Golden Corral. It's endless buffalo wings, Tennessee barbecue wings, and much, much more. It's all part of our endless dinner buffet, still for one amazingly low price, and it's only at Golden Corral.
I have low testosterone. There, I said it. See, I knew testosterone could affect sex drive, but not energy or even my mood. That's when I talked with my doctor. He gave me some blood tests. Showed it was low T. That's it. It was a number.
Today, men with low T have Androgel 1.62% testosterone gel, the #1 prescribed topical testosterone replacement therapy. Increases testosterone when used daily. Women and children should avoid contact with application sites. Discontinue Androgel and call your doctor if you see unexpected signs of early puberty in a child or signs in a woman, which may include changes in body hair or a large increase in acne, possibly due to accidental exposure. Men with breast cancer who have or might have prostate cancer and women who are or may become pregnant or are breastfeeding should not use Androgel. Serious side effects include worsening of an enlarged prostate, possible increased risk of prostate cancer, lower sperm count, swelling of ankles, feet, or body, enlarged or painful breasts, problems breathing during sleep, and blood clots in the legs. Tell your doctor about your medical conditions and medications, especially insulin, corticosteroids, or medicines to decrease blood clotting. In a clinical study, over 80% of treated men had their T levels restored to normal. Talk to your doctor about all your symptoms. Get the blood tests. Change your number. Turn it up. Androgel 1.62%.
When Gloria and her financial advisor made a retirement plan, they considered all her assets, even those held elsewhere, giving her the confidence to pursue all her goals. When you want a financial advisor who sees the whole picture, turn to us, Wells Fargo Advisors.
I stayed one time.
We stayed another time.
And now we're eating free.
At Choice Hotels, 2 stays pays. Right now, when you take 2 separate trips, you can earn a free $50 gift card for dining, shopping, or gas. Book now at choicehotels.com.
President Obama is in California right now for talks that could set the agenda for Washington and Beijing for decades to come. He's meeting China's new president, Xi Jinping. Cybersecurity is supposed to be the big hot button issue for these two. We're accusing China of stealing a whole lot of sensitive information from us, like military information, trade information, important stuff. China's saying they're not doing that. They're denying all these charges, saying that hacking is a problem all over the world. Chief White House correspondent Jessica Yellen joins us live now from Palm Springs. So, Jessica, yesterday I thought you and I would talk all about this. Today, I think you and I are going to talk a little less about this and more about what everybody else wants to ask the president, and that is what is going on. But are we going to be able to get answers from him today on this?
I think we'll get answers. I don't know if they will satisfy his critics. I doubt they will, Ashley. You know, the president, he will be speaking shortly, but in a statement in which he's addressing the health care law and its impact in California. So he is expected, I think, at some point today to at least take a question about the NSA, and reporters will be shouting it at him all day. So all along, he has been essentially unambivalent about his position on continuing certain aspects of President Bush's war on terror. Though he doesn't use that term, he does continue some of those policies, and this is one of them. I think you could expect to hear him say, when he does address it, Ashley, that he is acting within the limits of the law that were passed and authorized by Congress. Congress reauthorized this law in December, and if the American people have a problem with it, or if the members of Congress did, they had their chance to speak then. Of course, we'll wait for him to say it, but you have heard this from him before, where he says there's a careful balance between privacy rights and the need to protect. It's just a heightened, dramatic contrast when he's doing this, seated beside the president of China, who we've criticized China for so many years for their intrusions into the privacy of their own people. Ashley.
Actually, one of the first questions I had at work this morning was, gee, if China is hacking into all of our sensitive information, what about that big fat trove of all our personal data that the government is sitting on that apparently at least one person has decided to leak to the newspapers?
Well, the president, I think, would make the distinction, and, you know, we should point out that for China, the criticism, the U.S.'s beef with China on cybersecurity is largely China's theft of American intellectual property. So one of the big issues that will come up in the president's meeting with the president of China is that there are these accusations that they've stolen enormous amounts of very valuable crucial information from major American corporations and basically remanufactured or put American products. And now China has this intellectual property and can put it on the market and is stealing American know-how. And that is one of the issues the president is being pressed to bring up in these meetings. Some slightly, you can see why, different from the charges the president has to confront of whether the government is watching Americans. here
Well, I'm sure this
inside
is
our own
all
country,
all fascinating for President Xi to watch unfold while he's here. At the same time, we just want to remind everybody what you said, what I said off the top of this interview. The president is in California, he's in San Jose to talk about the Affordable Care Act for that state, but it's really unknown whether there'll be any mention or any questions fielded, Jessica, on what everyone else is talking about.
Yeah, I don't expect him to address it in his statement.
Yeah.
I think he could get asked a question about it. Just briefly, he'll be talking about the fact that in California, there are some 5 million uninsured Americans who could get coverage under the Affordable Care Act, and announcing that Latino television stations will be rolling out advertisements to enroll people. So you'll hear him talk about how this could be a model for a nation.
A big story. On any other day, probably the biggest story, but not today. Jessica Yellen, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Always good to talk to Jessica. She just gets it nailed on the head. All right, so there's an ex-police officer sitting in a place he does not want to be. None of us wants to ever be on the stand in our own murder trial. And guess what? Live picture for you. Brent Seacat is doing just that. Does not want his face shown on camera, though. And the judge obliges. So listen in and hear what he says. He's making some confessions, but not the one you think he might be making. More after this.
Both Maxwell and Ted have hail damage to their cars. Ted is trying to get a hold of his insurance agent. Maxwell is not. He's on Geico.com setting up an appointment with an adjuster. Ted is now on hold with his insurance company. Maxwell is not and just confirmed a 5:30 time for Tuesday. Ted is still waiting.
Yes.
Maxwell is out and about with Ted's now ex-girlfriend.
Later, Ted!
Online claims appointments just a click away on Geico.com.
I'm a hospice nurse. Berta Olson is my patient. I spend long hours with her, checking her heart rate, administering her medication, and just making her comfortable. One night, Berta told me about a tradition in Denmark. When a person dies, she said, someone must open the window so the soul can depart. I smiled and squeezed her hand. Not tonight, Berta. Not tonight.
To nurses everywhere, thank you. From Johnson & Johnson.
Oh, this is soft. This is so soft.
Hey, hon, remember you only need a few sheets.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so soft, you'll have to remind your family they can use less. Charmin Ultra Soft is made with extra cushions that are soft and more absorbent. Plus, you can use 4 times less.
I hope you save some for me.
Mm-hmm. You and the kids.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin Ultra Soft?
Pancake lovers are going donuts for IHOP's new Jelly Donut Pancakes.
They're amazing.
They're going cuckoo for new tiramisu. And they're going bananas for new Banana Graham Nut.
IHOP nailed it.
New signature pancakes at IHOP starting at just $4.99.
Go try them now.
My mantra? Always go the extra mile. To treat my low testosterone, I did my research. My doctor and I went with Axiron, the only underarm low T treatment.
Axiron can restore T levels to normal in about 2 weeks in most men. Axiron is not for use in women or anyone younger than 18 or men with prostate or breast cancer. Women, especially those who are or who may become pregnant, and children should avoid contact where Axiron is applied, as unexpected signs of puberty in children or changes in body hair or increased acne in women may occur. Report these symptoms to your doctor. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions and medications. Serious side effects could include increased risk of prostate cancer, worsening prostate symptoms, decreased sperm count, ankle, feet, or body swelling, enlarged or painful breasts, problems breathing while sleeping, and blood clots in the legs. Common side effects include skin redness or irritation where applied, increased red blood cell count, headache, diarrhea, vomiting, and increase in PSA. Ask your doctor about the only underarm low T treatment, Axiron.
A classic macaroni and cheese from Stouffer's. Starts with freshly made pasta and 100% real cheddar cheese. But what makes Stouffer's mac and cheese best of all? That moment you enjoy it at home. Stouffer's, made with care for you or your family.
Right now, live, we are able to listen in on a former sheriff's deputy as he talks to a court about the accusations that he murdered his own wife. He's explaining what happened on the day that she died. You're not looking at him, though. You're looking at the judge. Because Brett Seacat has asked, while he's on the stand, in his own defense, that he does not be shown on camera. This is what he looks like when he's sitting at defense table, but you do not get to see him unless you're sitting in that courtroom yourself. The prosecutors say that he shot his high school sweetheart, who then became his wife, Vashti, and then that he burned their home down with her in it to cover up the crime. He denies all of that. But one thing he does say he did is that he's blaming himself for her death.
It was my fault. For 19 years, I was the one who protected Vashti, and finally I pushed her into what I was supposed to be protecting her from. So it's my fault.
You can hear the voice wavering, but you can't see the face. Ted Rowlands is live in Kingman, Kansas. Also with me live is HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson. First to you, Ted Rowlands. Hard to see what that's like, that reaction that he's giving us in the courtroom. But how does he seem, and essentially what is he saying?
Well, he is laying out some doozies this morning, actually, and boy, I wish you could see him, because he is either a really good actor or a really bad actor, depending on your take on his presentation. He's blaming himself for his wife's murder now, twofold. First of all, he's blaming himself because the night of the death, not murder, he said it was a suicide, the night of her death, he says they got in a huge argument and he threatened her to this point where he thinks he drove her to suicide, saying that if we get divorced, then I'm going to take the kids, you'll never see the kids again, and I'm going to publish private photos of you on the internet, and I'm going to expose your affairs. Take a listen to this. He claims she had multiple affairs at work and that he was going to expose her and she was going to lose her job.
I knew that Vashti had an affair with the vice president of Cox, and I was suspecting that she was having an affair with her boss, or had an affair with her former boss.
But after that, Ashley, he basically said to this jury that his wife had attempted suicide several times before. Immediately, there was an objection. They went into chambers. He was not supposed to say that. There was even talk of a mistrial. He is up there trying to engineer this whole thing, and boy, today has been quite an eventful morning.
Well, it usually is the most dramatic time when a defendant takes the stand. Joey Jackson, speaking of that, this is not any defendant. This is a police officer.
Oh, yes.
So you know a lot
yes.
about murders and investigations, but you can know too much as well, because the average guy on the stand is just supposed to answer honestly, not, you know, strategically.
Absolutely. And remember this, he gave a 7-hour interview, right? So he gave statements to the police explaining it, and the police had some questions about the things he said. A lot of things don't make sense here. It depends upon whether he could explain it effectively. Like what? Like it's supposed to be a suicide and the gun is found underneath the body. How does that happen? Like something else. He says that he went to save her. However, he doesn't have really things associated with burns on his body that are of the nature or gravity you would think if you're going to save someone. And also, there's no blood on him. And so it begs the question, did this really happen? In addition to that, Ashley, you look at the cell phones that he burned the day prior to her murder. You look at the hard drives he burned the day prior to her death. And the fact is that while you may have good explanations, when juries look at things in context of everything, it's sort of, you know, you have to wonder, does it all add up? So he has some explaining to do. Whether he explains it effectively is always another matter.
There's such a dynamic that plays out with that. Your gut, and then his demeanor, and the whole Jodi Arias checking off every perfect thing, and that didn't work out well for her.
No, it did not.
Joey Jackson, thank you. It's
Pleasure
still not
and
over.
privilege.
A lot more coming up too on that. And I want to get you to a live picture right now of the Fairmont Hotel in San Jose, California. This is no vacation for the president, by the way. He's expected to speak any moment. The question is, will he address the latest controversy that seems to be rumbling through his administration? The government secretly gathering vast, massive, huge swaths of your information right across the country. Or will he just stick to China? All that in a moment.
Your smile, like other precious things that start off white, it yellows over time. When it comes to your smile, if you're not whitening, you're yellowing. Crest White Strips whiten as well as $500 professional treatments. Guaranteed. Crest 3D White Strips.
We know it's your most important video conference of the day.
Hi,
buddy. That's why the free Wi-Fi and hot breakfast are something to smile about. Now get great getaway rates and feel the Hamptonality.
Before hitting a number became only part of the equation. Before reminding ourselves that some bonds are more valuable than others. And before weighing the ups and downs in your life over the ups and downs in the market. We changed the way we help you live in retirement by changing the way we work with you to and through retirement. Connecting your wealth with your health and your life. That's the power of a Merrill Lynch advisor.
This summer, one man will push 9 ordinary people.
It's time to find out who you are.
And it all starts now. Beyond their limits.
Limits will be tested, physical challenges will be conquered, difficult choices will be made. They're all fighting for something.
A new competition series starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the hero. New episode Thursday at 9 on Slice.
Activating security features on your wireless device can protect you from things like unwanted access to your photos, emails, and banking in case of loss or theft. Protect your data, protect yourself, even from zombies.
I'm Anderson Cooper, and this is CNN.
Welcome to Around the World. I'm Suzanne Malveaux.
And I'm Michael Holmes. Thanks for your company today.
We are watching now. This is out of San Jose, California. This is the Fairmont Hotel. President Obama about to speak in a moment or so. You see they've already gathered at the podium. We are in that 2-minute warning that the White House often gives when the president comes out or is about to come out and speak. The topic that is on the agenda, he's going to be talking about his health care plan, the importance of people to sign up for insurance, but obviously a lot of questions that the reporters have, we don't know whether or not he'll take them, are about the widespread reports of the administration listening in, or at least collecting, not listening in, but collecting phone records through Verizon.
Yeah, John King's standing by. John, in the context of what this is meant to be about today, are we likely to be hearing anything about the elephant in the room?
Well, the main event, Michael and Suzanne, is about health care. And then the president goes on. The main reason he's in California, very important, very sensitive meetings with the president of China. But as you know, Washington and the country is now having this big privacy debate. We know the administration, because of some controlled leaks in recent days, is now having broad access to telephone records, to email records, even to credit card transactions, the Wall Street Journal says. And so remember, this is a president who said when he took office that he thought, and he said especially in the campaign back in 2008, that he thought the George W. Bush administration had gone too far. And that as you get 8, 10, now 11 years after 9/11, it was time to step back a bit and reconsider what we're doing. Well, today, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney are saying, we told you so, because they predicted back in that campaign that when this administration came to power, it would look at the intelligence and it would continue many of those programs. And now the question is, have they expanded them? And you have this very interesting collection of criticism. Libertarian Republicans, like, say, a new Senator Rand Paul. Liberal Democrats, like Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, saying, Mr. President, you've gone too far. Here comes the president.
And John, the president is about to speak now. Let's listen in.
It is wonderful to see all of you, and I want to thank everybody who's here. I think there's only one problem, and that is that my remarks are not sitting here. People, you know, things by Friday afternoon, things get a little challenged. I'm going to answer a question at the end of the remarks, but I want to make sure that we get the remarks out. People? Oh, goodness. Oh, somebody's tripping. I mean,
don't fire.
Folks are sweating back there right now. Well, good morning, everybody. This afternoon, I'm going to be in Southern California to meet with President Xi of China. But before I leave Northern California, I wanted to take a minute to address something that's happening with the Affordable Care Act in this state. I wanted to meet with a group of people who are doing some very important work on behalf of California's middle-class families. These leaders